Let's talk about the NFL. It's the 2D podcast. Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, Soren Petro with you. Much to cover tonight. Jalen Hurts becoming the highest paid player in NFL history, if you measure by average per year. What are the reactions to the deal? I believe also we now have 5 of the top 6 paid quarterbacks in the NFL are black quarterbacks as well. Does this keep the Eagles at the top of the NFC, or does the price make it too difficult for them to put enough talent around Jalen Hurts? Is he actually good enough to play with less talent? Patrick Mahomes was able to pull that off last year for the Kansas City Chiefs. Does this deal help or hurt Lamar Jackson get his deal done? Does he top this deal? Hurts negotiated the deal and worked with the team to make it happen. Do Herbert and Burrow do the same? When does Patrick Mahomes renegotiate? Devin White, Budda Baker, both want trades. Who's likely to get dealt? Where do they end up? What is the very latest that we're hearing on the NFL draft? We cover it all right now on the 2D podcast.
You're listening to the 2 Deep Podcast, the most complete analysis of the National Football League, breaking down the NFL like no one else can. 2 Deep is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. 2 Deep is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Gann Asphalt and Concrete is now hiring for all positions: project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, and crew members. Starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience, with paid time off and insurance, just to name a few of the benefits. Check out GannAsphalt.com for more info. Now, here are the hosts of the 2 Deep Football Podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
And welcome to the 2D podcast. It is time to talk about a guy getting a lot of money. $51 million per year is the average that Jalen Hurts will now make. He gets $110 million guaranteed. It is now what was it? The practical guarantees, $179 million. What this basically means is he's so expensive to cut. It's basically a fiscal impossibility that he could be cut. So while he doesn't technically get guaranteed any more than 110, it's actually more like 189. This is important because because Lamar Jackson wants to get everything completely guaranteed. Jeff, your reaction overall to this deal getting done for Hurts and what it means for him and the Eagles?
Well, it's great for him and it's great for the Eagles. He certainly he's going to cost more moving forward, so they're not going to be able to be as completely aggressive as they've been in the past. And you can't draft Jalen Reagor one pick before Justin Jefferson and not pay a price for that, as they did, 3 years ago. But first of all, it's well deserved. This was a guy that the narrative when he came out of college was he was a project, a raw talent. They had Carson Wentz. They were hoping to make it work with him. 3 years later, he's got them in the Super Bowl, and he's second in the MVP voting, all-pro quarterback. You have to give him tons of credit for that. You have to give Howie Roseman, their general manager, credit for having the courage and the nerve to trade away a guy who you drafted second overall and put your franchise in the hands of a quarterback that people, when they did this, weren't certain how it would work out. And so, yeah, I think it's a great move for them. It allows them to stay relevant and have a chance to compete and continue to make moves. They still have a good roster. I would anticipate them being in the conversation for winning the NFC again and having a chance to win a championship. So it took them, a couple months to get this deal done? And you look at Lamar Jackson, it's been 2 years. So I think that says a lot about who the kid is, what he cares about. And like Patrick Mahomes, he wants to win games, wants to win championships.
Yeah. Eric, what was your initial reaction when you saw it?
It's a lot, but the Eagles are spreading things out over, 4 years and that kind of thing. And, it's not as, it's not as big of a hit necessarily as it sounds on paper. Be that as it may, Jeff's right. Like they can't. There are some players now that they're up, that they're signed up with. Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, Hassan Reddick, AJ Brown. Like any injuries or ineffective play by those players, like you look at their over the cap ledger, it's a bunch of like minimum salaries for P5 and a bunch of prorated money. Like, their top 6 to 8 players, like they can't get rid of for a long time. Right. So and Hurts kind of affects them in that way. Will it be bad? Probably not. But the Wentz contract, kind of flashes through my mind. So I like Jalen Hurts. I think he's a great player. I think, he deserves this, certainly. Do I think the Eagles will eventually regret it? Yeah. I think for all quarterbacks except for like Mahomes, the team ends up regretting these deals, right? And you look no further than Green Bay, for example.
Green Bay regretting this last
different deal, isn't it?
This last one,
different contract.
Because of a guy that's a diva. I mean, Jalen Hurts is actually keeping his coach in line.
Is Dallas happy with the Dak Prescott contract?
I listen. What am I arguing with, a high school girlfriend? Can I address your first point before you throw another question at me to
back
deflect from the bad first point?
Hold
on the Aaron Rodgers thing. No, hold on. You asked a question. Let me answer it. Aaron Rodgers' deal is entirely different. Aaron Rodgers' deal, they're not happy with because he's gone whack job and spends more time on the couch of the talk show host than he does throwing to his receivers. I'm with you. I get your overall point. Like if you asked me to predict, will the Eagles, I asked this today, one of your former colleagues, by the way, will for 5 years the Eagles get what they want? Will they get $51 million worth of production from Jalen Hurts for 5 years of this deal? I believe the answer is no. I agree with you from that standpoint. And I would ask, I would point to the Joe Flacco contract as like, that's the villain in this deal, right? That's more realistic. Joe Flacco wasn't a jerk. He just wasn't good enough to carry one of the highest, tags in the NFL. I think Jalen Hurts is better than Joe Flacco. And I think while he's healthy, he's a dynamic player. And so I think they understand. I think this is more like, Aaron Judge for 8 years, where age 39, 40, 41. Miguel Cabrera, so he can hit 3,000 hits and 500 home runs in a Tigers uniform, and the last 3 years are going to be trash. I think there's a little bit, and I don't think this is a guarantee that it's going to be a bomb. They know that there's risk on the end, but right now, while he's healthy, I get why they're doing it, and they don't have an alternative, and the engine's running right now. Like the Dak Prescott deal, I don't know, Jalen Hurts has already accomplished way more than Dak Prescott.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything relative to what Jalen Hurts will accomplish next.
So you don't think he's going to be
a good quarterback? You're the one who brought up Dak Prescott.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me make the bigger list then, Petro. Okay, do you think the Rams regret Jared Goff? Yes. Do you think that the Eagles regret Carson Wentz? Yes. Do you think the Cowboys regret Dak Prescott? Maybe. Do you think that the Giants will regret Daniel Jones? I will bet 10 grand that the Giants will regret Daniel Jones. Do the Raiders regret Derek Carr? Even if they don't say so, yes. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Will the Seahawks regret Geno Smith? Yes. Like all these deals suck. All of them. Unless the guy's an amazing quarterback. And even the reason I brought up Rodgers is because even if the amazing quarterback is like has a little bit something wrong with him, which is Rodgers, it was age and diva-ness. For Russell Wilson, it was changing teams. All these contracts suck except for the Mahomes deal. All of them.
I guess, Jeff, no quarterback should be paid.
Yeah, I guess
I'm not saying no quarterback should be paid.
What's the alternative? I don't understand. Like the logic.
Hurts deserves this. Just be prepared for disappointment, fellas. That's all I'm saying.
But what's disappointment? How do you define that? Like, what do you think he's going to become?
Make another Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts at quarterback?
I mean, I think it's probably 50-50. I think it would need to come in the first 3 years of the deal because I think he's likely to be hurt because of the way he plays. Although I talked to a personnel guy last night who said, give me your reaction to Jalen Hurts. He said, I said, that's a lot of money to give to a guy who a lot of his value was running it and wedge blocking with him, jamming it in the middle. I mean, that's a lot of hits to shoulders and backs and, people at his feet and at his hands. And he said, listen, the expectation is that they're going to play him differently now. And he's developed as a passer. I'm not saying he's Patrick Mahomes, but he said he's developed as a passer, and we expect him to use those skills more. That should be more of what they do. If that happens, then I think you can believe it. But I think he's like when they signed, they won with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco got hot. Jalen Hurts was really good last year. And while he can run, he's really dynamic. And it's not a 10-year deal. It's a 5-year deal. Jeff,
No.
What's your reaction to what Eric's saying?
No, I think I think we live in this world. We want to live in this world where I don't think winning a championship makes it, or not winning it makes it a disappointment. I think as long as you're in the conversation, that's what you're paying for. So when you're giving guys this kind of money, you're saying we got a chance. It's great if you can say, okay, Mahomes is the best lock, or Joe Burrow is the best lock, or Josh Allen. We always end up talking about, well, this guy's going to get hurt. They all can get hurt. They all can have issues. As great as Patrick Mahomes is right now, 10 years from now, he could be like Russell Wilson. He could be like Aaron Rodgers. He could be a complete asshole. We don't know. The whole point of it is like paying quarterbacks is changing. And so the whole model of let's get this guy and have him for 15 years is pretty much out the window. Now it's like 5 years. Now it's 3 years. And we'll revisit it and see what happens. We'll look at our options. And there's a lot of quarterbacks like Carson Wentz, like Jared Goff, like Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, who've run their course. And so I think all these guys, I think it's a good contract for a guy who's 24 years old right now, who's coming off a season where he was second in the league in MVP, took a team to a championship, has worked his way into being, to me, that's the biggest, he's worked his way into being this. It's not like he just happened. And so I would expect him to get better as time goes on. And the deal he signs allows them to keep putting good players around him.
I like this comment. I think it deserves. Kevin says, "No, Jeff, Mahomes will never be an a-hole." I mean, I don't think so either. But neither will Jalen Hurts, right?
Yeah.
Like that's one of the things. Like when I see that video of Jalen Hurts grabbing his coach and having him pull his arm down, where he's being the adult in the room in the middle of the Super Bowl. Oh, by the way, while he's the guy getting hit, right? Like Draymond Green can't keep his shit together for 5 minutes in a basketball game because a guy grabbed his ankle. Jalen Hurts is being asked to be the tip of a spear on a wedge 7 times in a Super Bowl, and he squats 700 pounds and drive his way through and be as physical a quarterback as we've seen in the NFL, short of Cam Newton. And I would almost say more physical because he gets low and doesn't just absorb hits. He takes guys on, and yet he's still calm, cool, does everything right, works hard by all accounts. Man, if you're going to overpay and go down with somebody after hopefully 2 or 3 good years, sign me up for Jalen Hurts and Mahomes. I think Mahomes is the better passer, but Hurts off the field and in the huddle is more Patrick Mahomes than he is any of the other names you mentioned there.
I agree with that. And what I'm saying is not, I mean, being an asshole, look at all the quarterbacks. Forget about the asshole comment. Look at all the quarterbacks in the last decade outside of Ben Roethlisberger and Drew Brees. Most of these guys end up playing someplace else at some point in their careers because they get sideways with people. They get tired of somebody. They don't get along with coach. Andy Reid is not going to be with Patrick Mahomes' entire career. Brett Veach may not be with Mahomes' entire career. Things change. The whole point I'm making is that if you're going to bet on guys, let's say with Mahomes, who's as safe a bet as you can bet on right now, Jalen Hurts is in that same category because he's done enough. If it's always going to be, oh, well, he's just not this or he's not that or then who are you going to pay? You got to pay somebody.
Yeah, I guess I would say, Eric, I understand the overarching point. I'm with you, but like Mahomes isn't going to win every one of the next 15 Super Bowls, right? So who is? What other quarterbacks are? Who would you bet on?
It's going to be a team built around a quarterback on a rookie contract in all likelihood.
So no quarterback should ever be given a second contract.
No, I'm not saying that.
I'm like, Brady do it.
But Brady and Mahomes were, they structure their deals really well. And this deal is structured fine. Like, it's not horrible. And, the Eagles are pretty smart. Like, I'll bet on the Eagles more than I'll bet on another team. But, like, history is not on the side of, great on rookie deal, sign top of the market, and then in the future. And it's like aging, guys. It's like I I don't want to age. I'm going to anyway, right? But I gotta be upfront about what it's going to be like to age. I'm going to get a little fatter. I'm going to be more like slower, out on the basketball court and all this stuff. And that's the reality, right? Should I not grow older? No, I need to, right? That's what's going to happen. It's the same thing here. Like what's the alternative? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say trade Jalen Hurts. What I'm saying is know that your success rate's going to go down when you sign Jalen Hurts to this contract.
And we're acknowledging that. But now we're saying so then you're on board with what the Eagles did.
I'm fine with what the Eagles did. I'm just saying good luck.
Yeah, I agree. But we know that everybody's chances go down with an expensive quarterback, right? We agree. But I think the point. So I acknowledge that point. Like Jeff and I are saying, I'd still bet on Jalen Hurts before I'd bet on a lot of the other guys, right? Like I'll bet on Jalen Hurts over Trevor Lawrence. I haven't really seen that much out of Trevor Lawrence. I mean, there's a lot of people cheering because Trevi made his first poo down in Jacksonville. I mean, come on. You won 9 games in a crap division, and I know we came back against the Chargers, but it is the Chargers. But I mean, Jalen Hurts does things that Trevor Lawrence doesn't. I think you're spending a little short.
He does. Well, and really, to echo that same point, at some point,
yes, he runs for 18 touchdowns, Eric.
Lawrence has more playoff wins through 2 years than Hurts did. Are we missing this? Are we not building in projections?
So next year, after 3 years, Trevor Lawrence will have played in a Super Bowl and have had the 2-time MVP, 2-time Super Bowl MVP, 2-time champ on the ropes during that game.
Well, he's not playing in the Super Bowl against Mahomes. So I will say that.
Okay. He will have the kind of performance that Jalen Hurts had in a Super Bowl.
The Jaguars are a worse team than the Eagles, Petro. But Trevor Lawrence, I will bet on Trevor Lawrence before I bet on Jalen Hurts. That much I will tell you. Yes.
I just gave you an opportunity to, and you backed off. So you'll bet on him in certain selective situations.
I mean, I will bet. Okay, I'll bet. I mean, how much do you want to put on it, Petro? We have tons of bets in place. I will bet that Trevor Lawrence is a better QBR next year than Jalen Hurts does. How's that?
Talk about
what's that based on? Why would you think that?
He's better. He's a better fucking player.
Well, Jalen Hurts is healthy and running the ball. He's not better.
Yeah.
I want to look and see something here. Hang on.
But the point I was going to make, though, is that eventually all these quarterbacks who are getting paid big money are going to be in the same boat. They're still going to be the quarterbacks you're going to bet on. And it's great to think about, well, hey, who's going to be on the rookie deal with the great supporting cast? But those guys have to beat these guys. So you're going to have.
But the league is set up for them to beat those guys. Is kind of my point, right?
Well, first of all, what are we betting? And I'm willing to do it. Are we any minimum games played on either side? Like if one guy plays
100, game, 200 pass attempts each guy.
Done. Minimum. Okay. And what are we betting?
What do we want to make it?
Whatever you want. Can you even make wait a minute, hold on. I don't want to get you in trouble. Can you even make this wager?
If it's not over $250 is the thing.
Oh, well, what's the point? I mean, I don't even get out of bed for less than that. I mean, come on.
Stop.
Steak dinner. We'll make it.
Steak dinner. Okay. I think Lawrence was not that far behind last year.
Actually, it was a 68.8. Or Jalen Hurts 66.4 was 4th best in the NFL. Trevor Lawrence was 15th best in the NFL in QBR at 54.3.
Yeah, so not that far behind.
20%.
Okay, you can laugh now. Laugh now.
You
guys all laughed and called me insane when I said Jalen Hurts was going to play in the Super Bowl. You forget about that.
100%.
But now that I'm back,
I don't think you were calling him an MVP candidate at the time. I think you said he'll play the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
with a great team, a great roster.
Yeah. It all makes sense now in hindsight to the people who didn't predict it at the beginning, like I did.
Yeah. Well, listen, hey, nothing but props. I mean, I would beat that drum for as long as you can because you're gonna look like a horse's ass when this one comes due.
Okay.
You don't want to look like a horse's ass. Again, Asphalt and Concrete can help you out. If your parking lot's a disaster, customers are complaining, you don't have to live like that, for crying out loud. Gan Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, has been making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, and in-house crews, plus every project coming with a written warranty. What more could you ask for, folks? Make your business look better. That first impression matters. Find them online at ganasphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gan Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lots. What's this do for Lamar Jackson with the Jalen Hurts thing, Jeff?
It hurts him a lot. Not to no pun intended there, but yeah, I mean, it's for the Baltimore Ravens. Next time you talk to Lamar Jackson, you're going to say, well, this guy in Philadelphia was just playing the Super Bowl, second in the MVP race, just took a deal that wasn't fully guaranteed, but he wants to keep trying to win championships in Philadelphia and keep a supporting cast together, and took him about 2 months to agree to it. So now we have one more example of a quarterback who is on your level, who is not trying to get a fully guaranteed contract. At some point, Lamar Jackson has to understand that the game has changed in terms of, 2 years ago, if he wanted to get the deal he's talking about, he had more ammunition. But the longer you play, the more they always come back and say, what have you done for me lately? And what hurts him, he's been hurt the last 2 years. They haven't won a playoff game the last 2 years. He missed the last playoff game they were in. And as you've mentioned plenty of times, he plays in a way that puts him in peril. So I think he's the deal that he talked about being offered whenever it was last year, a 3-year, $133 million, fully guaranteed, made a lot of sense. We've heard numbers as high as $175, $180 million guaranteed money. Makes a lot of sense. At some point, you got to accept that may be where your market's at, and that Deshaun Watson is always going to be an outlier.
Eric, what does it do?
Yeah, I think it further hurts the cause for Lamar. I think, man, it'll be interesting to see. Like, one of the things that I want to track come next Thursday is also this: what happens if the quarterbacks in the draft aren't as voraciously selected as we assume, right? I think like a week or two ago, we were thinking about Young, Stroud, Levis, Richardson in the top 4, 5, 6, right? And then maybe Hendon Hooker late in the first round. I think all that's a pipe dream, right? I think we're going to see Young and then a kind of a dearth, and then like smatterings, right, of Stroud, Levis, Richardson. And that's going to even be a bigger middle finger to Lamar Jackson in this whole market, right? And so I think it's going to be a rough couple weeks for him.
Yeah, I do too, and I think it. When he sees these deals coming about, it just empowers the Ravens to stand their ground. I asked somebody the other day. I was making my rounds, calling around about the draft and everything, and I said, what's your prediction on what happens to Lamar Jackson?" They said, "I think he plays for the franchise tag." Right? Like, didn't you say last week, Jeff? No way he doesn't play.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
so I think it's honestly it's sad. If you could just if you got the deal that Jalen Hurts has, and I think the point there is a great one about the practical guarantees, is that like it's $255 million, but there's like no way, and it's only $110 million fully guaranteed, but there's like no way he doesn't get $179 million.
Yeah.
And how you can walk away from that kind of money, and you've been hurt each of the last 2 years. We've talked about it many, many times. Somebody said in our last podcast, "I'm so done with the Lamar Jackson thread," and I am too. But it won't go away, right? Because he's a dynamic player that won't sign. Like, I think we've all settled on that the Aaron Rodgers trade isn't going to happen until after the draft. So after the draft, that will, come up and hopefully come to fruition. But Lamar Jackson deal, it's a huge battleground for how contracts are going to be done, and it's one that the owners just aren't going to give on.
Yeah, that's really the storyline in all of it. Yeah, it's just are they going to move closer to what we've seen in other sports leagues with fully guaranteed contracts? You need a quarterback to make it happen, or is he going to accept that man, I'm losing money every day here. I've lost money the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I mean, and I agree with you. He has to play on the franchise tag because his options are so minimal at this stage. And there's not going to be some team that's going to jump out and create some crazy offer that the Ravens can't match.
Yeah.
And so, and he's going to get paid more money, as much money as he's made in the last 4 years in one season.
It's a no-brainer. Herbert and Burrow come next, Eric. Herbert and Burrow get what kind of deal after what we see here that happened with Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you probably see Herbert next and then Burrow, just because I feel like the Bengals are kind of a classic day late and dollar short organization, but obviously you have the artist formerly known as the San Diego Chargers competing here. So all bets are off. Like I would say Herbert first, just on intuition. And I think these deals are going to be probably in that 52.5, 53 million range. I think most rankings of quarterbacks are going to have those two guys ahead of Hurts. Even though Hurts has probably accomplished more if you look at team success. But that's kind of where I'm at. I think that the Bengals are in a tough spot because they generally pay their quarterback, but I don't know if they're going to want to do the rigmarole that the Chiefs have done as far as escrowing all that money, making that big, long deal for Burrow, given the state of the franchise.
Justin Herbert can't ask for more money than Jalen Hurts, can he? I mean, he's got no play. I mean, his playoff resume is a meltdown and 2 swing and misses in his first 2 years, where Jalen Hurts has already, been the front runner at one point for the MVP.
That's my favorite song, Petro, but I think he's going to ask for more.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't give it to him if I were the Chargers, right? Like Joe Burrow should wait and he gets more than both of them, right? I know Hurts is, he and Hurts have both been to the Super Bowl, but Burrow's done more, in my opinion. And Burrow figures to be healthier the way he plays. So Burrow should be the top guy. Herbert should make less than Jalen Hurts, in my mind. It doesn't always work that way, but I think part of the reason why the Eagles jumped on this is they wanted to go ahead and set the market. They gave more than what some people expected them to give. I saw 2 for like 267 was one of the estimations of what it'd be, and it ended up being 5 for 255. So 1 year less, but way more per year than they were projecting. I mean, you can't be putting her. I couldn't give Herbert more than that.
Well, Kyler Murray's the one that screws that up, right? Because he's getting paid more than Jalen Hurts. And I saw his agent, Kyler Murray's agent, Eric Burkhart, when I was in Texas Tech, and we were talking about that. And he was just like, grinning from ear to ear about that deal and talking about the Lamar Jackson thing, because he's like, that's why you go get as much money as you can after 3 years. And you lock it up because you don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, Kyler Murray's blown his knee out, and there's a lot of issues with him in the organization. But the agent felt compelled to make that happen. Justin Herbert's not in that situation. I imagine he's going to end up making more than Joe Burrow. Because I would almost anticipate Joe Burrow doing what Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes have done, and to a certain extent, Josh Allen, which is do something that's a little more friendly for your team to keep making moves. I think Joe Burrow is about legacy too. I think he's about championships, and he knows he wants to keep Jamar Chase around. He wants to keep T. Higgins around. He wants to keep as much of that unit together as he can, because as Eric just said, Cincinnati is not the kind of place where you're going to get a lot of guys to come play unless you really got a good thing going. And they got a good thing going right now. So why put that in jeopardy by being greedy?
By the way, I looked this up. So Kyler Murray's 230 total, 46.1 average per year.
189 million guaranteed. That's what I'm looking at.
Oh, the more guaranteed. Okay. I'll have to look for that. But I see your point. I don't know. Like, is the forgotten man in all this Josh Allen? I mean, not that his contract's in, he's not going to get paid, but we've talked a lot about quarterbacks and everything. Like, Buffalo was the darling for at least Jeff and I. We both had Buffalo in the Super Bowl. We've quickly forgotten about Josh Allen and where he fits into this mix. And I actually think that's kind of a good place to be, Eric, that no one's talking Buffalo Bills. Everybody was Buffalo Bills. Yeah. You said it many times. They've got to learn to play with that target on their back. They didn't live up to it. The target's gone now, isn't it?
Yeah, they feel like the 2019 Chiefs, don't they? Or the 2022 Chiefs, kind of where they were the flip line. They don't have the championships, of course, but they're a flawed team that's still really, really good. And they're really well coached and they have a great quarterback. And I think that I think, yeah, I mean, I think Buffalo's a dark horse. If I was betting, I'd consider them.
Let's talk a little bit about Allen Robinson going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Are we watching the Rams? Are they smart enough in the room? McVay is a progressive guy. Are we going to watch the first NFL team truly flat out tank and go for Caleb Williams? They've got a hometown guy in their building. They're doing this partly because of cap, but their cap wasn't quite as bad as I thought when I looked it up. They already are at like, I think 195 million on only 27 players for next year. We'll see where the cap gets to next year. This year it's 225. But is this them making sure that they end up with Caleb Williams? Is that what this is designed for? And I heard from some folks last night that they're thinking that like the Texans aren't going to go quarterback. They're going to trade out. Probably somebody else will go quarterback. They're going to trade out. The Cardinals are trading out, and everybody's kind of in this. Everyone maybe not. Like I don't think they're ready to go all in NBA style, but they're like, well, we don't love this guy. Let's go ahead. It's okay if we suck because Caleb Williams is there, and maybe we end up with a guy that most people are saying is better than anybody in this draft.
Is Caleb Williams that highly lauded, or is he just he's not in the draft? He's that sexy guy.
That's the popular theme now. That if Caleb Williams were here, if the kid from Carolina were here, they'd both go above everybody in this draft class. But I hear that a lot. He's got another year. If he has a great year at USC, he will. He'll be 1-1. But he's only 6'1", right? Like he's not, was it 5'10", like Bryce Young is, but he's still only 6'1". Right now, that's only 1 inch shorter than Mahomes. He's 225. He definitely looks the part, but he was also banged up for USC at the end of this year too. So it's not like he's been without injury. But that is kind of the popular theme now, and I don't know if it's manifested itself in the sense that the teams that might have to pull the trigger on the quarterbacks are now just a little bit gun shy, and are creating a safety net that they can tell their fans, or at least put rumors out through their mouthpieces. That like, well, one of the reasons we didn't do it is because, we could be in position for Caleb Williams and he's way better there. And so I don't know if they buy it or they're just selling it. Eric, do you buy it or not that Caleb Williams is a generational quarterback?
I mean, I think he's very, very good. I mean, I don't know about generational. Like 1 year under Lincoln Riley produced. I mean, now we're talking about these guys: Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield. Like 1 out of 3 ain't bad, I guess. And it depends upon which year you're talking about where that one is occurring. USC lost to Utah twice last year in either game. I was particularly impressed, but I think people are looking forward to saying Drake May is more of a prospect than Levis, Stroud, and Richardson are. They're also looking at Williams and the possible potential there. I think they are. I mean, I also think NFL teams are realizing that their window is bigger depending upon who they are, right? If you're thinking about Houston, like they just signed D'Amico Ryans, like their window is bigger. Arizona just got Monty Ossenfort and not Shane Steichen, but Jonathan Gannon in the building, and their window's bigger. Like they don't have to be desperate necessarily to make a play there. And also their rosters are both terrible. So like their incorporated rookie quarterback to me is a little bit foolhardy to an extent. So I think that they're getting, and to vis-a-vis the Rams only have 45 players on their roster right now. That's one of the reasons why, you can think about tanking. They have one quarterback under contract right now. No specialists under, no punters, no kickers, no long snappers. Like they're basically that fantasy team that is going to pick those guys up in free agency. And that to me is the surest sign right now that they're not trying to win.
Yeah. They're an amazing little snapshot, and they like to be the smartest kid in the room. They don't send guys to the combine and all those kind of things. And when you're winning a Super Bowl, all that is lauded as the way to do it. When you crash and burn to the worst team in the NFL, or in the cap situation, all of a sudden it's going, well, wait a minute, what What with your newfangled ways now? What do we think of that? I do want to address this because a couple of people like I love this one. Brian said, yes, Caleb Williams is quarterback QB1 next year. Certainly is right now. Let's see what happens. And we don't disagree with that. The point is he a generational guy? Max Chadwick was on my show today, one of your former colleagues, Eric, at Pro Football Focus, and he wrote an interesting piece. Did I get his name wrong? You're looking at me funny. I thought that was his name. Isn't that his name?
No, I just don't know him very well, but yeah.
I got the name right though, right?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
For once.
That
was my surprise.
Yeah, it was that's why you looked up funny at me. He wrote a piece like how many of next year's top guy at their position would be better than this year's? And like he talked about, like Alt, the offensive tackle at Notre Dame, would have been the number one tackle last year, this year, and will be next year, right? He's better than any of the offensive tackles that'll go in this draft. But on quarterbacks, he said Caleb Williams is better. And so then I was like, okay, that's interesting. He's better than Bryce Young, who is his consensus number one in this draft. I said, well, who would you take? Would you take Caleb Williams or would you take Trevor Lawrence? Because while Trevor Lawrence wasn't Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning or John Elway, and really there was debate about Peyton Manning even, but he was a guy that we all knew was going to go number one. And, if Caleb Williams is so good, I would think it would be Caleb Williams, right? Trevor Lawrence hasn't set the world on fire. He took Trevor Lawrence, right? So that to me was its own little snapshot. His job is covering college football, and, maybe he's more inclined to always stick with the guys that are in college football because that's what he writes about. But just there, I gave him the opportunity, and he took Trevor Lawrence over Caleb Williams. How great can he be? And then if you're falling in line, these other, if that guy's better than everybody in this year, how great are the quarterbacks in this year? Like, I don't know, is this just buyer remorse and getting nervous before you go to the altar? Like, why are we hearing all, or is it just smoke screens, Jeff?
Some of it may be smoke screens. I think two things. One, all the hype that follows quarterbacks in the draft is just so out of control now. It's been out of control for like the last 5 to 10 years. And it's so easy now at the college level to throw for 4,500 yards and 46 touchdowns and 4 interceptions and to do all the training to make all the throws at your pro day. And it's just like, end of the day, it's like I'm almost to the point now where I'm just like, let me just wait and see what happens. It's like, and I get people getting excited about Caleb Williams right now, but people are excited about him because guess what? He hasn't gone through all the scrutiny all the other guys have gone through over the last 3 or 4 months. And so all these guys have been nitpicked to death. And now people are saying, oh, here's some flaws, here's some warts. You don't know. When Patrick Mahomes got picked, nobody knew what he was going to be. When Jalen Hurts got picked, nobody knew what he was going to be. Everybody thought Sam Darnold was going to be a success story. Everybody thought Trey Lance was a guy who had to go get him. And now he's playing behind Brock Purdy. I mean, to me, I try to bring more perspective to this because every year it gets worse and worse and worse. And there's so many young quarterbacks now, like Carson Wentz, like Jared Goff, who've been taken high, who are playing with different teams. But yeah, I mean, Caleb Williams, I'm sure he's going to be the darling of the draft. But to the question you asked earlier about are the Rams tanking for him, I feel like the Rams are just taking a different business approach because they've reached the point. I know this because I talked to people in their organization about this, where 4 or 5 years ago when they were being hyper aggressive in trading for Jalen Ramsey and trading for Marcus Peters and trading for Matthew Stafford, like the cost of doing that was a lot cheaper. Now a lot of teams do it and they don't want to be playing that game anymore. So I think they may be tanking, but they're also trying to figure out how can we play ball, to your point, in a smarter way than everybody else is, when the way we used to play is outdated now.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Jeff. Like the cost of doing the veteran trades is just way. I mean, it's still higher than like analytics people would have liked, but when the Rams were doing it, it was as cheap as it was ever going to get, right? So to the extent that they could develop guys in the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds and do that edge, if there was ever one, is gone, right? And so to your point, like pivoting off of that, very similar to when the Oakland A's stopped drafting, once Moneyball happened and they started going back into high school and drafting players again because, every team had copied them. And like, yeah, it's a very good point. And I think the best thing to come out of the Rams winning a Super Bowl in 2021 was they won a Super Bowl in 2021. The next best thing was then all the teams tried to copy them.
Yep.
And like sort of paved the way for them to rebuild.
Yeah. Dolphins with their all-in approach down there, and
worked for them.
Yeah, they're a lot
Good
of
for them. Got a 7 seed.
Yeah, I mean they got into the playoffs, right, with a third string quarterback, and that's you gotta pick your shot. I'm with you. I love it because I think a lot of teams are going to overreach and it's going to blow up on them. You're going to have some really bad teams down at the bottom.
Denver.
Yeah, for sure. Anything you're hearing draft wise? Anything like one of the things I kept hearing is corners, depth of corners, right? A lot of corners in this draft. That if you're in need of a corner, you're going to be happy in this draft. Not near as many wide receivers. Like there's the top handful of guys, but after that, not as deep as it was last year. Anything you're hearing, Eric, out there on the draft front?
I think at the wide receiver position specifically, like you're just going to see people falling more than you believe. And this has been the case forever, right? Like these teams love trench players, and depending on the year, they love quarterbacks, right? There's a couple tried and true like bets if you want to make it. The last quarterback in the first round is always going to fall, right? Haskins fell to 15, Locke fell to 42, Fields fell to 11, Mac Jones fell to 15, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, last year was an egregious case. Wide receiver, like think about the year where there was a plethora of them. Last year, we saw the first 6 go in the first 18 picks. However, we didn't see the first one until 8, and we didn't see the best one until 10. In the other draft where there was great wide receiver play, Henry Ruggs went 10 or 11, and then we didn't see Jefferson, Judy, and Jefferson, Judy, and Lamb. We didn't see them until like the late teens, right? This this draft for wide receivers isn't anywhere close to as good. And so when we look at JSN, we look at Johnson, we look at Zay Flowers, I'd really love the Chiefs to get. Those guys are all going to go later than people believe.
All right, Jeff, you hearing anything?
Well, I agree with what Eric said. Even someone like Quentin Johnston, who I was hearing, a lot of buzz about him being the best receiver in the draft. His stock is definitely falling because he's not as fast as people thought. But the idea that the Texans may not take a quarterback at 2, it's getting a lot more momentum. Like you're hearing more people talk about like it's a real thing, and that they might end up taking an edge guy. Which I don't know how, if you're Nick Caserio, you can pass on a quarterback, but maybe that can happen. Maybe that can happen. I just think it's amazing you could be at that spot and not take a quarterback.
Yeah, but you think about though, like is Caserio running the show? Is it really Caserio's name attached to all these things anymore, or is it DeMeco Ryans? And I think about DeMeco Ryans, like again, DeMeco Ryans' first year as DeMeco Ryans as a Texan, they went with Mario Williams instead of Reggie Bush while he was there, right? That was a holy crap, we're going to get his edge player guy. And Mario Williams had a great career. But then when his first year with the Niners as an assistant, that was 2017. They had the second pick in the draft. And as opposed to taking even Mitch Trubisky, they traded back and took Solomon Thomas.
Wow.
And again, like and you look at the Niners history, when the Niners traded up and took a quarterback, it blew up in their face in Trey Lance, right? So you just look at his history, like being on a team and seeing how it's run, right?
I'd like
to kind of make sense that they would prefer the defensive player. In addition to the fact that he's a defensive player.
I wouldn't mind giving Trey Lance a chance to perform a little bit more.
I hope Kwesi trades for him.
Yeah. All right. Listen, Gann Asphalt and Concrete now hiring for all positions: project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, crew members. Starting pay is up to $30 per hour based upon your experience with paid time off and insurance, just to name a few of the benefits. You can check it out at GannAsphalt.com for more information. Real quick, last thing, Devin White, Budda Baker asking for trades. We brought up when somebody asked for a trade and it never worked out with their current team. Eric shot back Deebo Samuel. That was one. Jeff, is this a Deebo Samuel situation, or are these guys going to be moving on draft day?
I think it's definitely, for Devin White, it's more of a Deebo Samuel situation. Budda Baker's new contract for the next 2 years. That's some pretty good numbers, like $13-14 million. But he's also on a really bad team. And there may be a team that wants to make a move for him. If he wants to get out of there and Arizona decides they don't want to play ball, I mean, it's always, like you said earlier on in the last podcast, takes two to tango. And if somebody wants to come up and snag him at that price, a team that needs a safety and maybe thinks that they can actually make a move in the playoffs by having that guy position, a pretty good player to go get. If Devin White's staying, the Bucs have made it clear they're not moving him, but certainly I think Budda Baker could be on the
Mario Williams, by the way, Tommy had 97.5 sacks in his career. Yeah, he had a great career. Stop challenging me on shit you don't know. Anyway, 97 sacks. Twice as many as you thought at the top of your head. Okay. Devin White, the Bucs are probably going to get rid of him, right? Because they've kind of rebuilt and moved. I actually think the Bucs have had a great offseason. Getting Jamel Dean back, getting Levante David back, going with Baker Mayfield, kind of having, a sort of intermediate solution where they can still be somewhat competitive, but if it goes pear-shaped, then they're still going to be okay. I actually think the Bucs have done a great job here. If they can get a third-round pick for Devin White, second-round pick for Devin White, it would complete a great offseason for them. And I think there is a team that, when you look at a former top 5 pick, that carries with you. So I think that's one that probably gets done. The Budda Baker one is just weird to me because I just, I don't see teams after Jamal Adams going and trading what Arizona's going to really want for the rest of that deal.
Here's what I'm intrigued by. Number one, if you watch the Hard Knocks in season, and it was hard to watch, but Budda Baker, the organization talked about how much they love him, how great he is in the locker room, how great he is in the huddle, how hard he worked to get back out on the field. They thought he was going to be out 4 weeks. He didn't miss a game with a sprained ankle. He was back in there playing. He is ideal, as far as what you want from a guy. If they will put him up there, I don't know what they'll get. Jeff's right. There's a price tag that comes with it and everything. But if you think you're a safety away, he's a guy that you would want, that you would covet to get. And if it wasn't the Cardinals, I would say this is a team that's going to tank, right? They've got their quarterback that they're married to, good or bad, right or wrong, but they're not good enough with the talent they had around him. They know that from before he went down last year. So they know they've got to get better. Well, he's not going to play. So why not strip it all down, get as many picks and as many talented young players as you can for this year? And to your point, Eric, next year, get next year draft picks when the draft is expected to be better. That would actually be a really smart play. If you think you're 2 years away, is Budda Baker still going to be playing at a high level? I don't know. Maybe not. But why not flip him for multiple picks and just tank this year? Not to get a quarterback, not to get Caleb Williams, just to amass as many really high picks as you can and try to reload your franchise in a year.
Are we worried though?
Huh?
Are we worried with the fact that there's 2 teams in the NFC West that might be tanking? We're looking at Houston and we're scratching our heads because those 2 teams were pillow fighting in the week 18 and that ball goes right through that Indianapolis guy's hands. And now Houston's got the second pick and not the first pick. That's the one thing I'm worried about when I look at Arizona specifically in terms of the tank, which is that the Rams might, to your point, the Rams probably are executing it better than they are. Do they get enough in the way of losses to actually make it worth it?
Yeah. By the way, to wrap up, let's say it's not a true podcast until Eric loses it.
Don't talk shit, okay? Just stop talking shit.
Settle down. You know the rule. And you're trampling all over it. Settle down. Next one. We'll see if he makes the Hall of Fame. This is from Tommy. He probably will. Sorry, Zach Thomas got voted in.
Move the goalpost some more, Tommy. We'll see. I
don't talk numbers to the math guy.
Because I know ball, and you want to get after me.
I've known him for a long time. He just wants to get under your skin, and he is absolutely doing that.
He succeeded.
Yeah, he has succeeded. I was going to go back here and find it. What I thought would be great if I want to credit whoever it was. I think it was Brad. Here we go. Brad said this a long time ago. We need a podcast dinner in the future. maybe with a boxing ring for Tommy and Eric to square off, as well. That could be part of it as well. But yeah, we have discussed that. We got to drag Eric's ass in here from in town, and he's getting ready to move and everything, so it could be a little harder than we think. But we will get that together at some point. It's a great idea, Brad. We've actually talked about it, so we'll see if we can pull it off in the not too distant future. All right, next week our pre-draft shows. Very excited about that. We got a podcast coming, right? We're gonna do podcast again next, or podcast. Well, of course, we have a podcast. Mock draft coming next week, right? We're gonna mock draft. Is that the plan?
Yep.
Just a little tease. We'll be mock drafting, next week, and looking forward to that as well. So for Eric Eager, the man whose skin has easily climbed under, for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network. Look at Eric's reaction. This is squeezing it up. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHP. Saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Two Deep NFL Podcast.